So what is success? If we're supposed to succeed, and we are, then how in the world do we do it? Well, let me just start out by sharing with you a little story. The year was 1815. Date was March 1st. On that day in history, a small ship sailed very quietly to dock in the French Riviera. A man stepped off that ship with a fire in his eyes. The tyrant was back. Napoleon had returned. At that time in his life, Napoleon had been exiled to an island called Elba, which is just off the coast of Italy. And he didn't want to live. And so he carried around his neck a pouch which contained a poison called nightshade. He poured the poison into his body, hoping that it would kill him. But all he had was severe cramps and convulsions, and then he recovered. Shortly after his recovery, he escaped from his British captors and he stole one of their ships. He had just stepped off his stolen ship to take out his revenge on all of Europe. You see, in his warped little way, Napoleon believed that he should be in charge of Europe. He wanted control of all of Europe, and he thought this was the perfect time to strike. Because at that time, the Allies had so many little differences they were quarreling about, and he was going to strike them when there was no unity. But sure enough, as soon as Napoleon stepped off his stolen ship and onto the continent, all those petty differences didn't seem so important now, and Europe united against Napoleon. One of the men they looked to defend them was the Duke of Wellington. The Duke was a British hero. He was brave, he was courageous, and if anyone could help stop Napoleon, it had to be the Duke of Wellington. Well, the Duke understood that a line would have to be drawn in the sand and a battle eventually would be fought. Well, before his battle, he was in Brussels preparing for it. And he and a member of the British Parliament, Thomas Creedy, were walking in Brussels Park. And they were just strategizing, trying to figure out what are they going to do about this problem. And all of a sudden, they noticed something. There was a young man just gawking at a statue. The young man was almost a boy. He was a redcoat, an infantryman, a soldier. All of a sudden, Wellington grabbed Creedy by the arm and he pointed at that young man. He said, "There! There! Look at him! Look at him! It all depends on that article, whether we do business or not. You give me enough of them and I am sure of victory." Well, on June 18, 1815, that line was drawn in the sand and the Battle of Waterloo was fought. It became known as one of the greatest military victories in all of history. Wellington had with him over 67,000 men and 150 artillery guns. Napoleon had with him over 71,000 men and 246 guns. The battle began at 11:25 in the morning, went all day long, went in until 10 o'clock that night. Because of heavy rains the night before, Napoleon continued to delay his attack. In hindsight, that delay cost him not only this particular battle, but the rest of his career. But at 11:25 that fateful morning, Napoleon pummeled the front of Wellington's line. Wellington's men fought hard, but they were being pushed back. Finally, all hope for victory fell on the British infantry. These young boys, it all fell on their shoulders. A continent fell on their shoulders. Well, they believed in their leader, Wellington. They believed in his vision to stop Napoleon. And they even began to believe in themselves, and they pushed back. And they pushed back so hard and so firm that they created a human stone wall. And then the reinforcements were able to arrive. They gave them that extra time. And then that united front is what pushed Napoleon off the battlefield, licking his wounds. He was safe again. Now you might be thinking this afternoon, that's a pretty good story. You ought to make a movie out of that. But what does that have to do with us? Everything. Just like Wellington, when he grabbed Creedy by the arm and he said, "There!" I'm doing the same thing. There! 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 It all depends on that article, whether we do business or not. You give me enough of them, and I am sure of victory. God wants us to join the super successful. Because when we are successful, as we already talked about, it makes everybody more successful.